This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is very different, obviously, to the weekday shows, because the weekday shows is all about the day's news. The weekend show, we are looking for the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story and the sleeper story, one that's kind of flying under the radar a bit, and then our favourite story of the week. And of course, it's very different as well because it's a competition. It is the highlight for me is the competitive element of it, because I like to win, and I have not won for some time. And we have an adjudicator join us each week, and that adjudicator is painfully impartial. Fear and Greed colleague Adam Lang. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Michael.
Painfully impartial, would you agree?
Yes, but it's not painful for me.
Do you know why it's not painful for you, Adam? Because the three of us were away for a couple of days during the week. We all travelled together, flew together. And do you know why it's not painful to you? Because you booked the tickets. You're in charge of the tickets. And
seat allocation.
You in seat allocation. That is exactly right. And you obviously were in the Virgin Club. We flew down Qantas, came back Virgin. We're equal opportunity flies. You were in the Virgin Club, and I was enjoying myself out, having my cup of coffee and my sushi outside that I paid for. Anyway, I walk onto the plane. Who should be in economy plus or X or whatever it's called? Who should be in row 3? Plenty of room to stretch out. There's Adamski sitting there, happy as.
What a coincidence.
I looked around to see if Michael, he'd probably been having sushi too, looked around to see if Michael was there. No, he wasn't. Didn't seem to be at the front of the plane.
Mm-mm.
I got down to row 19 of 25 or 6 or whatever, and I noticed Michael was in row 21.
Mm-hmm.
We took our places. Quite nice down there with the plebs. Not Adamski, up the front of the plane, Michael.
That's right. Well, Sean, you and I are the everyman here. We are representing the common. Well, I mean, that's what I like to think I do with my story selections, and clearly we do it with our seat selections as well. Although, Adam, we feel like there is a class division here.
Maybe I was just more crafty in my booking.
Did not at some point think, oh, how about I get myself the good seats and the boys, they get the bad ones down the back? Did that not at some point think, oh, maybe that's not fair, maybe that's not egalitarian? But that's just like, I've been CEO of a listed company, that's what I do.
We'll celebrate our third birthday apart.
Some of us will celebrate better than others. Shall we jump into it? The biggest story of the week.
Yeah, let's.
Sean, you go first.
Well, I tell you what, I think it has to be the PwC scandal. This week, the Federal Finance Department directed the Big Four consulting firm to stand down any personnel who knew about tax leaks from government contracts. They've effectively banned PwC from getting government contracts. Now, remember the background. A former partner called Peter Collins did work for the government, having signed a confidentiality agreement back in 2014. He then took what he learnt from working with the government and used it to win contracts for PwC. In fact, PwC won 14 new clients worth $2.5 million using that knowledge. Collins has been deregistered, but it's emerged many other PwC staffers, including partners, knew about the practice, and the group CEO stood down earlier this month. That's the background. This week, though, we found out that Treasury has referred the scandal to the Australian Federal Police to consider a criminal investigation. We also found out that Finance Secretary Jenny Wilkinson, not happy Jenny. I tell you what, she was angry. She emailed senior executive staff in finance and said the government's 413 contracts with major suppliers will now be tightened so that existing and future contracts could be cancelled for bad behaviour. This is why it's such a big story. It's now not just captured PwC, it's captured anyone doing work with the government. Wilkinson also said the department has directed PwC to stand down personnel who knew of the government leaks spread by the former partner, Peter Collins. She called it the leaks an abuse of confidence and trust. Treasury and Finance are now coordinating advice on how to deal with PwC from a whole of government perspective. And that's actually quite the challenge because PwC has already this financial year been awarded $255 million in government contracts. Obviously a disaster for PwC. They ain't going to win government work for a while, and there'll be a lot of businesses out there who, when it comes down to picking between one of the big four, PwC will be one of the first, probably the first crossed off the list because their whole integrity has now been questioned. but the full impact is much, much bigger. Anyone that works with government from here on in will be affected. And that is literally tens of thousands of businesses out there with millions of employees. Can I go bigger? Biggest story of the week. How's that, Michael?
Yeah, that was pretty good,
I
actually.
mean, it was like serious flourish. There was flourish, there was melodrama, but it was like a serious melodrama.
Yeah. Look, and I mean, the thing is that story just has so much scandal in it.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
It's quite good. I mean, it's not the biggest story of the week, but it is.
No, it is.
It's a
definitely.
scandalous one, which is nice. Look, I'm going to be honest. I've had a little bit of criticism over the last week.
No.
That my biggest story of the week last week was actually too big. And I just mean not just. This might surprise you. Not just in the scale of the story and the importance to the economy, because it was massive in that regard, but just in sheer duration.
Oh, absolutely. I'm with whoever complained about that part of it.
But in my defense.
Here we go.
It's large.
Cue the music.
Stopwatch is on.
It's largely because of your interjections. It's because of the two of you just chiming in whenever you want. Did you see how respectful I was of you then, Sean? Did not utter a word.
My story was interesting. If we let you go without interjecting, we're going to lose listeners.
It's for the common good.
Hang on. Adam, did you just unite with Sean? Collusion. I'm declaring bias. There is an asterisk next to any results that go against me. I'm going to jump straight into it. Into it after 3 minutes of.
This is 2 minutes, 42 seconds into this story. We don't know what it is yet. Go on.
Okay. This week, I'm going to finish in record time. Now that we're starting now. The rest of it was a preamble. It doesn't count. So start the timer now. And even though I'm going to be done very quickly, it doesn't mean my story is less important. Because if anything, this week's biggest story is actually the biggest of the month for the economy, potentially the year. I don't want to make a big claim like that because we're only in May. I'm talking about Australia and India signing deals that bring our countries much, much closer together. Because obviously this week we've had Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the country, which was actually a big story in itself, right? You had, I think it was 21,000 people packing into a stadium to see him at an event. Just extraordinary kind of passion from his supporters, Modi Mania, they called it. But India really, really matters to Australia. It'll soon be the third largest economy in the world behind only the US and China. So for the Indian leader to be here, signing deals on migration and labour mobility is a really big thing. And in particular, that labour mobility deal will let students and professionals move kind of more freely between the countries. It'll open more doors for business.
1 minute.
Was that a 1 minute timer?
Mm-hmm. I'm not interrupting. I'm just letting you know.
You just did.
I'm just letting you know.
Oh.
You said you're going to be quick. I just think it's important that you know that you've hit the 1 minute mark, not including the 2 minutes 43 to begin with.
See, you really disrupted my flow. I get a bit of steam up here, and then all of a sudden you jump in and you disrupt me. So let me just pick up kind of where I left off. One of the things, right, that we're going to work more closely on is green hydrogen technology. Fantastic. Importantly, crucially, just absolutely vitally, Mr. Modi said he looks forward to seeing more Australian investment in India. In anyone's language, that is very promising for the trade relationship between us. If we look at what happened with China, right, and the fact that when all of those tariffs were put on our exports into China, it emphasized the importance of diversification of our export markets. And this kind of deal with India is crucial to that because it is diversification away from relying so heavily on China. And one little quick additional note, which is still about India. It's
Additional note.
It's still about India, so it's still linked. This time last week, we had the Prime Minister chairing the Quad meeting with India, Japan, and the US, which agreed to strengthen security and focus on clean energy supplies. We had Prime Minister Anthony Albanese signing a new clean energy pact with US President Joe Biden, pushing for Australia to be treated as well
3 minutes
as a domestic source under the Defence Product Act in the US, which would boost US investment in our defence manufacturing and critical minerals industries. And as if that's not all enough, you even had opposition leader Peter Dutton congratulating the Prime Minister on his engagement with world leaders, which is actually some very nice and very rare bipartisanship. Let's see more of that. Let's see more bipartisanship, more big deals, more wheeling and dealing on the global stage, more tightening of the relationship between Australia and India. The biggest story by far, even with the interruptions. Thank you, Adam.
3 minutes, 40.23.
Okay. On topicality, timeliness, economic impact, subjective bias, and I'm just going to squash the melodrama this week.
Ooh.
Why?
Oh, I like that.
I think we've had enough already. So I know this is going to shock probably both of you and maybe even a bit me. Michael wins.
No, that does shock me, actually.
It does. Now, Sean, you had the PwC scandal as your sleeper story a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it actually is such an enormous story. It's still going to keep going. But what is there? About $1 billion worth of Big Four business in the last 12 months with government. So it's $1 billion story. And then it's just gotten bigger into all government work. But when you take some of the parts of the Australia-India trade, the USA trade, particularly if we get classified differently for defence trade, that could add up to actually even more. And so I'm honestly really vexed on this one, but I think Michael's has to win it.
Don't be vexed. Let's just move on. 1-0.
Michael's quick to claim that one.
No, I'm mindful of the time because I've been hammered lately for not kind of keeping you lot on track. So let's move on to most remarkable story, shall we?
Righto. You go first, Michael.
Okay, thank you. Of course, airline story. There's always going to be an airline story every week. And this week, the most remarkable story comes from Qantas because it expects to record an underlying pre-tax profit of up to $2.5 billion this financial year. Just ponder that. I know we're on a time limit here, but just take one moment out of my kind of rapidly ticking seconds to let that sink in. A pre-tax profit of up to $2.5 billion. This is the same airline that less than a year ago, mind you, reported a loss of nearly $2 billion. $2.5 billion profit. In fact, it's not only a great result, it's the airline's best ever. Almost $1 billion higher than its previous record in 2018. Of course, a terrific result kind of for shareholders, and Qantas is spending another $100 million buying back its own shares on top of the $500 million already committed. Good for shareholders, not so good for travellers, because this result has actually happened when flying activity still hasn't reached pre-COVID levels. So we're not even flying as much as we were kind of when they recorded that previous record result in 2018. So what does this mean? This absolutely ripping result, this extraordinary profit has come about because we are still paying through the nose to fly. Don't expect that to end just yet because prices are getting better. We've been talking about that recently, but outgoing CEO Alan Joyce says there's still this mismatch between demand and supply, particularly on international routes. There is strong demand based on forward bookings. On the plus side, you've got kind of fuel prices kind of normalizing a bit, which helps keep fares down or bring them down a little bit. But still, isn't this just a remarkable story about a truly remarkable result? That it's just a pity that it has to happen at the expense of the poor, everyday traveller. Even the ones that are sitting in kind of 23B and 19A instead of like, what was it, 3B or 4A?
The joy of it was that he wasn't in the middle seat.
Yeah. It takes the gloss off it a little bit, doesn't it? Yes.
Can I just make a comment on your story?
Yeah, please.
Your stories are much better when we interject. Like, that was pretty dull, truth be known.
I was trying to keep it short. I don't know. Look, you know what? You two are impossible to please.
Bit of feedback for next story, Michael. Perhaps short and amusing.
Like, it's sort of one of those ones that with you, Michael, we try our best to help you out. We try and give you some...
Shine a light on the good stuff.
And if that's exactly right. And if we don't, like in that one, we just both shut up and listen to you. It's just like there's no way you're going to win this one. It's like we're helping you.
You two are honestly insufferable.
Hang on, you just won the last story.
I know, but now...
I mean, falsely, but albeit you won it. Okay. I have actually gone from I've gone for a remarkably serious, remarkable story, whatever you want. But it is a very serious issue, this one. Anti-slavery campaign group Walk Free, which is funded by Andrew and Nicola Forrest of Fortescue Metals fame, has released its 2023 Global Slavery Index. It estimates that $26 billion of yearly imports into Australia may use forced labour. That's bad enough. The group also estimates that 41,000 people in Australia live in modern slavery, which is defined as either forced labour or forced marriage. And that's up 173% over 3 years. It's getting worse, not better. So Walk Free's 2023 Global Slavery Index estimates that in 2021, 50 million people were living in modern slavery. 50 million people around the globe. Amazing. Remarkable. The products we import that might involve modern slavery include electronics, solar panels, clothes, seafood, a bunch of stuff. Australia's 5-year-old Modern Slavery Act prohibits the purchase of goods that were produced using slave labour, but Walk Free boss Grace Forrest, who Grace is the daughter of Andrew and Nicola Forrest, says governments and businesses just aren't doing enough to prevent the sale of products made using forced labour and wants non-compliant companies to be fined. Not so easy in many ways because you buy products and it's very difficult to find the provenance of the production of those products, but companies are being told, and in fact its legislation says, they need to do that. I just find it remarkable that modern slavery in Australia particularly is so prevalent in 2023. Adam.
Okay, this is really good story selection and very difficult to split. So I'm going to give you a draw both on this one. I think those numbers are staggering, Sean, that Walk Free organisation report. You know, there is modern slavery rules, but this sort of data means, you know, we're just not doing enough. And it is illuminating and really disturbing. On the Qantas profit, that is remarkable and the turnaround's remarkable. But it's also, you know, we know the reason we're doing this. We like travel. We want to fly. And we've been clearly prepared to pay a lot more than we used to do the travel that arguably need or we missed out on. But the fact that there's only really 2 major airlines in the country, both of them look at where Virgin has come from. It's come from out of bankruptcy, out of receivership, and now going to be listed again. It's turned itself around really quickly. And Qantas, the main other competitor, the fact that we're using these 2 competitors and they're both getting really good returns on their businesses, I think is remarkable. So I have to call a draw on this one.
Hold on. Now, just...
Good judgment.
Even Michael reckons he's lucky there. What is it remarkable that these airlines that were propped up, suddenly there's this spending boom that they're making a lot of money? Really?
Well, I think that point that I made
I'm a grumpy loser, aren't I?
is quite remarkable, the fact that the profit is so far exceeding the previous record year when we are still so far behind on flying activity. It's remarkable, and it's equally remarkable. The score is 1.5 to half.
I like both these stories. I reckon you think that you've probably got a bit lucky, so you've just jumped on it.
No. I thought I was okay. You got into my head. When you
pretty wild up there.
When you criticised my story, and then you got Adam to bloody jump on board as well. 1.5 to half. Let's take a break. We'll come back and do Sleeper Story. All right, we're looking for the sleeper story of the week. This is a story that's not getting the attention that it deserves, or is going to become a bigger story further down the track, which it kind of feels like it shifts more towards that latter category now. Would you agree, Sean?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, okay. All right. Do you want to go first? You go first on this.
Sure.
one.
I mean, I'm a bit grumpy so far this show. I've got to put that out there.
Are you?
Yeah.
You've hidden it so well.
Look, the sleeper story for me this week was the news that Woolworths, will start moving payments onto Australia's first real-time payments system, which is basically a cheaper alternative to the card networks controlled by Visa and MasterCard. This is big for all of us because eventually millions of Australians will probably be using this new infrastructure called Pay2, which has been developed by the banks in recent years. Woolies processes around $60 billion each year in 1.1 billion transactions. It's the largest payments processor behind the big four banks. Under the new system, Woolies effectively gets access to customers' accounts and takes money straight out. It goes from the customer account straight into the Woolies account rather than going via one of the card providers. Customers have the option, you don't have to do it, customers have the option of linking their bank account directly to the Woolies app using Pay2. Great for Woolies because they get the money immediately rather than a day later. Also lower merchant charges. Good news for retailers. Now that Woolies is on board, other big retailers and billers, I reckon, will join the party. Not good news for MasterCard and Visa, but actually really good news for consumers because those surcharges should come down, and certainly good news for businesses because the payment will be direct. We're going to hear a lot about this. So I think this is a very, very exciting, futuristic story, a great sleeper story. Michael.
Yeah. I mean, entirely devoid of entertainment, but a good story, which is key.
Come on, payment systems are fascinating stuff.
No, it is actually a good story. And when you talked about it through the week, you made me realise the significance of it. So I enjoyed that one. For my sleeper story, look, earlier in the week, right, I reserved a story for the sleeper category. I did it publicly on Fear and Greed. I declared that I was going to do it, and I asked you, Sean, for permission to do it. And you said, yep, it's all yours. Now, what I did quite cleverly there was actually deploy a decoy because I'm not going to do that story after all, which means, Sean, that the many hours that you've spent planning your rebuttals to that story that I told you about are wasted.
A cunning plan, Michael.
Look, I didn't want to say it was cunning, but it actually was. Also, I forgot which story I had reserved and had to find another one. I'm going with a sleeper story. It's an unusual choice maybe, but it's about the way we work. And it is in fact a two-pronged sleeper story, right? So there are two ways in which this is a sleeper. So automatically it beats Sean's because his has only got one prong. Work from home is ending. And I reckon by the end of the year, those working from home more than 1 or 2 days a week will be in the absolute minority. Why? Because this week we saw one of the big trendsetters in corporate Australia, the Commonwealth Bank, instruct its 50,000 employees to come back to the office for at least 50% of their time. And one of the quotes that they used in kind of promoting this and talking about this was that they said, we've learnt that on average, we actively connect with 11 more colleagues each day when we're together in the office and spend 20 to 30 minutes more time collaborating. Other companies have done this already. Mineral Resources boss Chris Ellison said that if you want to work from home, you don't work here, which is kind of blunt. But CBA, Commonwealth Bank is different, right? It is a big employer and one of the biggest companies, obviously, in the country. It is a trendsetter. So I think this week, no, I don't just think, I declare this week to be the turning point for work from home in Australia. But it's also a sleeper story. Here comes that sneaky second prong.
No one likes a sneaky second prong, I'd just like to say. Go on.
Yeah, sometimes I regret my choice of words. That second prong is that this is also a sleeper story, Adam, because legal experts are warning now that these policy changes could actually be very difficult to enforce. And they may end up now in legal action. So can you imagine companies now having to go to court, potentially like the Commonwealth Bank, going to court just to get their staff to do something that was considered completely normal just kind of 3 or 4 years ago? This could actually be something that bogs down companies and ties up court resources for the next couple of years. This is a big sleep and an unexpected consequence of the change away from working from home. It is a big sleeper story. Don't you agree?
No, I don't. I think it's been sleeping there for a while. Sorry, Michael.
No. But I maybe didn't hear. I said that this week is the turning point.
Oh, no, I did hear that bit, but may I just respectfully disagree? I think it's been present for some time, the return to the office. I do think it's really interesting what Commonwealth Bank has done. And you'd say that only 50% of the time is probably quite reasonable, right? And they've got some data to back it up, interact with more people, more productivity. So I think it's a good story, but I just think Sean's got this one. I think the Woolworths payment system, working with the banks, Pay2, Visa and MasterCard, they've been there for so long. This is a really big disruption. And so I think this story will impact so much of the way we transact and the fees involved and the business involved. So Sean wins this one.
I was when you say that you think that 50% is quite reasonable. There are some leaked conversations between from staff conversations, staff discussions from CBA, like the outrage
in reaction to it.
Oh yeah.
Did someone hit reply all on the email?
Yeah, no, it's all in WhatsApp. It says by the look of it.
Isn't that encrypted?
Yeah, I mean, not when someone takes a screenshot and sends it off. And one of their messages was that our team has agreed that one office day per week is a good balance.
That's great.
So is this like the fourth week in a row that we've gone into the favourite story, the final category, at 1.5 to 1.5?
Probably.
It could be. I might have to ban myself from draws, like giving you a draw.
Yeah, force you to make a decision.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, well, let's get the favourite story done. This is our decider, 1.5 to 1.5. Who's first on this one?
You go first. Go for it.
Oh, golly. Okay, this feels risky to me because I'm finishing on a serious story and you've already criticised me for
your favourite one.
Yeah, I am. I know I would usually finish on something kind of flippant, right? And something maybe a little bit
mostly to do with aircraft, but you already used that one up.
I know. But my favourite story this week, it's hard to say with a straight face. My favourite story this week is the regulation of the buy now, pay later sector.
Oh, you old man.
See, this is the problem. We spend 3 days away at a conference and you infect me with your
boringness.
Yes, I didn't want to say it. But suddenly I've come back going, oh, regulation, that's an exciting story.
Get off on that.
Anyway, look, and yes, it's going to come across as a little bit odd when I do normally go with something that's quite frankly usually a little bit immature for my favourite story of the week. But instead, the regulation of the buy now, pay later sector under credit laws is my favourite story because this is going to change the entire landscape for the buy now, pay later sector. It's going to require companies to decide if their products are suitable for users under responsible lending obligations. The rules will be obviously scaled to the risk involved for particular products, kind of as in funding for smaller purchases may have fewer restrictions than larger ones. It is my favourite for two reasons. My favourite story because it actually gives some certainty to the sector that they've known regulation was coming for a long time and we've spoken to the boss.
You've always been very worried about those buy now, pay later operators.
Well, I'm worried about people in business not being able to operate with certainty. And so, and this is something that you have actually taught me, that the number one thing, the number one disruption to business is uncertainty, not knowing what the operating environment actually is. So I have learnt this from you, Sean.
Putting that back on me. Nice work.
Yeah, indeed. And we've spoken to the boss of Zip on the podcast before, and they were very supportive of the need for change and made a lot of submissions and worked closely with the government during the consultation process. This is big. And importantly, really importantly, it provides greater protection for consumers, treating buy now, pay later like a credit product. 7 million active accounts. A lot of people have more than one. I was reading some research, and it's actually pretty confronting that showed an alarmingly high number of people that when they get into trouble with one account are then opening a second buy now, pay later account, or a third or a fourth, and the problem just keeps getting worse. And this should really help that. So I think this story has been a long time coming, and I know it's a serious one, but it is actually one that I'm quite interested in, and it is my favourite story for the week.
Well, that was interesting. Excellent. Good favourite story. Mine's very serious too, but you'd probably expect that, wouldn't you?
I certainly would, yes.
Yes. My favourite story, when we talk about big tech stocks, right, we normally go with Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, that owns Google, Tesla, Meta, things like that. We don't really talk much about NVIDIA. And firstly, because it's really hard to say, given the spelling, NVIDIA. It makes computer chips. No one really talks about it because consumers don't buy computer chips, so we don't hear as much about it. Did you know now, though, it is the 5th largest stock on Wall Street, behind Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Alphabet. In fact, some pundits during the week reckon that it could well end up bigger than Apple. It came out this week and said sales in the 3 months ending in July will be about $11 billion. What's that mean? Well, that's about 50% more than what investors expected. Suddenly, everyone is ploughing money into NVIDIA. It's benefiting from the AI frenzy, the generative artificial intelligence frenzy, and it's basically positioned itself at the top as the top provider of components for training artificial intelligence software. This is one of the great examples of potentially a tech bubble, a great example of the hype that AI is generating. NVIDIA pushes its future in AI. That's its strategy. We're all about AI. As a result, it's more than 6 times the size of Intel, the chip maker, but last year only had half the revenue. It is an amazing tech story. It's still got a long way to play out. Is this a company that actually becomes worth as much as Apple? Or is it a massive tech bubble that will burst? And the only reason it's doing so well is the frenzy of AI at the moment. I just think that's real. I don't have an answer for that. But
that's a rhetorical question.
Absolutely. I think that's fascinating to actually see in real time a company like NVIDIA suddenly become the share market darling, bigger than Tesla, bigger than Meta. Potentially it's just a bubble, or maybe it does take over Apple. Come on, Adam, you'd love that sort of stuff, wouldn't you?
I actually do. I think that's – I hadn't anticipated that's where you're going to go with the story, Sean. So tech bubble, AI inspired. Yeah, you have to win. This could actually be massive. I don't know if it would also be my favourite because you now have me quite concerned, but I will do some more research and find my way through it.
It's one company compared to 7 million accounts in Australia affecting everyday people. Oh, you know what? That's a seat 4A decision. That's what that is. That is a decision made from the rarefied air of premium economy or economy X or whatever it is. So what are we, 1.5 to half? No, 2.5 to 1.5.
Yeah.
Your maths. For a kid who actually topped the HSC state in maths, it is remarkable how you peaked at the age of 18.
He's got 2 young children. He's sleep deprived. He had to be with us for 3 days on the road.
That's it.
All right, what's the score breakdown after the 2.5 to 1.5 drubbing I've received? What was the breakdown?
Okay, Michael, really good scoring again. It's your equal PB 94.
Oh, yes.
High quality battle. And Sean's equal PB 95.
So I really want to get to one of those ones where I could actually beat him on the count back and lose overall. Yeah. That's my new goal in life. I don't want to win outright anymore. I just want to have kind of people questioning your judging.
As opposed to us questioning his judging.
That's a victory overall.
Righto.
All right. Good competition. Fantastic competition. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a great weekend.